Hello everyone, I'm here today with the Vice President of Student Affairs, Victor Wilson, or more commonly known among students as VP. VP, do you mind telling me about yourself?
Oh, where do I start? So it's kind of interesting because I've spent a lot of time, several decades here in Athens as a student and graduate student administrator, and so I kind of consider Athens home. But a lot of people don't know that I'm technically a South Georgia boy. I was born in Albany, Georgia, at Phoebe Putney Memorial Hospital, and so left Albany when I was about 8 years old, and then actually grew up from 8 until high school in Decatur. And so Decatur's kind of home. And then I moved to Athens, and so I consider Athens home. So, that's kind of interesting because when people say, well, where's home? And I usually feel like I have 3 homes. And so I'm a product, in terms of understanding about me, I'm a product of 3 different places. And so I was born and raised in Georgia, but have left Georgia twice. Lived in Arizona for a while, lived in South Carolina, but pretty much, a native of the state. I think things about me, myself, I'm a dad. I think that's probably one of the most important things. I love being VP, but I think being a father is the most important thing to me. And so I'm a father of a 33-year-old son and a daughter-in-law and an amazing 4-month-old granddaughter. And I have been doing this work for a long time. So I in terms of who I am, that's a little bit about me and my history.
So you were born in Albany, Georgia, grew up in Decatur, Georgia, and now are in Athens, Georgia. When was the first time you came to Athens, Georgia, and the first time you came to the University of Georgia?
So the first time I came to the University of Georgia, I came for the Georgia Scholastic Press Association. And I wrote for my high school newspaper and used to just write different articles. And the Georgia Scholastic Press Association, we were meeting at the journalism school. And there's that little quad, the little outside quad, outside of journalism on the corner right there right there at Baldwin. And I remember standing there, and it's really kind of interesting. It was April of my senior year, and I had gotten a full ride to Morris Brown College in Atlanta. So I was going to go to Morris Brown, and I remember standing there, and I drive by that spot every day, and I was like, I got to come to school here. This is like God's country. This is where I'm meant to be. And so I ended up applying, and it was like April 8th, and the applications were done like April 15th. And so I had to get my application. So I called admissions. They're like, we don't know if we're going to get it in time. So I actually drove up here and delivered my application, got admitted. So that was the first time I set foot on the University of Georgia campus. And that first time I was like, I knew I was destined to be here. And obviously it worked out. So.
Will you tell me a little bit more about your experience as a student here at UGA? What were you involved with on campus? What were some of your fondest memories as a student?
Well, that's a lot. That's an 8-hour conversation, which we don't have time for. But I was involved in SGA. I was involved in freshman council. I was involved in the Methodist Student Association. I was involved in Men's Glee Club. I was an RA. I really kind of like said, if it's there, I'm going to do it. And so I was involved in Hall Council because I lived in Russell my first year. Second year, last 3 years, I lived in Lipscomb Hall. So I took advantage of being involved. And so that's why I really kind of push students to get out of their bubble and be engaged. And so, but that was 1977. And, a lot of people there was only 16 years after integration. So there weren't a lot of students who looked like me. In fact, it's kind of funny now, but everybody thought I played football because the only black men on campus played football. So it was like the football team and me and four or 5 other guys. And so at one point, I remember telling my dad about it, and he said, just start telling people you're on the football team. So people like, do you play football? I was like, yeah. And I reaped a lot of benefits from that. People were like, oh my God, I love you. You're wonderful. So, but it was a really interesting experience. But really got involved and really kind of embraced campus. And it didn't take me long to realize that this was my place just as much as it was everybody else's. So.
Along that journey, when did you become involved with Greek life, and what started that involvement?
Officially, I think the involvement was later on, but I had lots of friends that I went to high school with, and so people would invite me over to different parties, invite me over to their house, and so I was really aware of Greek life as a student, before I officially became a member. And then I think from my viewpoint, I think some people may disagree, but I think that the African American student life on campus back when I was a student was really, really relegated, and it was really, really at the hands of the African American fraternities and sororities. So most of the programming, most of what was done, and so really they were integral to us having a student life on campus. So I was exposed in that way. I think my first exposure was having a mom and dad who were both in the PHC organization, so they were Greek, having uncles that were Greek. And so that was the first exposure. First exposure on campus, though, were just from the organizations. And then I quickly learned, I'm not saying that this is still true, but I quickly learned that most of the leadership positions here at UGA were heavily Greek. I mean, your student body president, just folks that are involved in SGA were a lot of times were Greek members. So that was the first time I realized the importance of Greek and Greek leadership on campus.
Did you ever consider going through recruitment yourself?
I did. Actually, it was kind of interesting. This is kind of interesting. I went through, before I actually came to SIGET when I was an undergrad, I went through the process for Alpha Phi Alpha. And typical me, I waited to my last semester. And they were saying, we don't know when we actually are going to be able to initiate, and you might graduate in the middle of that. So why don't you consider grad chapter? And I wasn't mad about that. I had kind of waited. I was pre-med, so I had taken school very seriously, and was very serious about my studies. Had good grades. Took the MCAT, killed it, by the way. And then all of a sudden, I ended up not going to med school because I was orientation leader. But that last year, when I had no longer was going to go be an ear, nose, and throat specialist, that's when I realized I need to kind of branch out. And so I said, I finally need to do this Alpha Phi Alpha thing, and then I kind of need to do the orientation thing. So I did consider it, but it just didn't work out. So,
a couple of follow-ups there. I'll start with, I guess, going from pre-med to now the vice president for student affairs is a long pathway, I think, to go from one to the other. What happened along there that led you to your position now?
Well, it's kind of interesting because that's why I always tell students, you never know the things that you'll do on campus that are going to impact and change your life. And I was pretty serious about med school. I had said this is what I'm going to do. Study, like I said, had good grades. And then when I did orientation, I was the orientation leader after, I'll say, the second national championship. So we won a national championship, and so I was orientation leader that next summer. And I was in heaven. I was like, I don't want to go to med school. I want to work on a college and university campus. I want to work with students. Now, I was a little naive because they gave us shirts that summer. They gave us a meal plan. We had room. Everybody loved us. It was just, we won the national championship. And so that was my idea of student affairs. I really didn't know any of the difficulties. But that's when I decided that this is what I want to do. This is my passion. And I just flipped. And I just said, I need to go figure out what I need to do as an undergraduate degree, as a master's degree, or as a doctoral degree, to figure out what to do this work. And I think it worked out. I hope you would agree that it's worked out.
I would definitely.
I think I would have been a pretty good doctor. I think I'm a better VP though.
Yes,
Right.
sir. And so, did you stay at UGA for those graduate degrees?
I did. I actually did all my. I did. That wasn't the plan, obviously, but I ended up doing all of my, post-secondary work. I did all my work here at UGA. So.
I want to circle back to your point about SIGAP. At what point did you get involved with SIGAP, and where has that involvement led you now?
That's kind of interesting because I think it was SIGAP had gotten kicked off campus, and I think it was maybe '94, and the student body president at the time came to me. It was really kind of interesting. Bart Newman, and he said, I've got an idea, and he said, I want to bring SIGAP back to campus because they got kicked off campus, and he said, but I want it to be different. And I said, it was kind of funny because I was working in the president's office, and I said, okay, Bart, that sounds good. Yeah, sounds great. So Bart left, and then then he came back and said, I want to bring SIGAP back to campus. I've kind of done. So he kept coming back, and every time I would just blow him off. And then eventually I got this call from headquarters, and they were just like, well, we're coming to campus and want to sit down and talk to you. And so I thought, this is like, he's serious. And so I called Bart and I said, what is it that, he said, well, I want you to be chapter counselor. But he said, one of the things that's really important to me is I really appreciate our brotherhood. I don't think brotherhood has any color. He said, and I want to come and I want to create brotherhood that we have. Guys who do great things, have great grades, get involved, just do really good things on campus, and really kind of come in and really create a tradition. And so then I start realizing it was serious. And so from there, history was made. I was initiated, became brother, got on the national board. I'm now the grand secretary of the national fraternity. Don't ask me what that means because I'm still trying to figure it out. But it was just from that initial conversation. So.
And when you were a student and involved in all those different areas on campus, whether that be SGA, as an RA, as an orientation leader, did you ever see yourself being a mentor to students in those exact same roles later on?
Yeah, because I think not as a first year student necessarily, because I think, you're so new, but I eventually learned that when you step forward and put yourself out there as a leader, people will come to you. And most of the time they will come to you and look for ways to help themselves as a leader. And so I think the worst leaders in my book are those that are not willing to give back to other leaders and pour into them. And so sometimes that's a difficult conversation. Sometimes that's, a great conversation. And sometimes it's not asked for. But the reality is like, I can't tell you how many times I've had conversations with leaders and I've said, they're not asking me this, but this is something I think they might want to hear. And you think, it doesn't mean anything. And 20, 30 years down the road, they're working at some big corporation and they're like, I want to thank you for that conversation we had 27 years ago where you told me that I need to get over myself because I thought too much of myself and not others. And it has changed me and made me the man that I am today, and that's why I'm successful. And I'm like, wow, I really appreciate that. Now in the back of my mind, I'm going, I don't believe that I said that. I can't believe I said that to another person. But I really think that's what leaders have to do. And so that to me is one of the things that I've learned that is really, really important is as leaders you pour back into others.